Myanmar. Sai Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I would like to start my statement. Madam Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to address the Arria-formula meeting of the UN Security Council on the situation in Myanmar. I would like to address the challenges facing the pro-democracy movement across Myanmar, including for the ethnic and religious minorities. This statement is made in my own capacity as a Myanmar citizen, and it has nothing to do with the opinions of individuals or the organization that I have affiliated with in the past. After 3 months of the illegal military coup d'etat in Myanmar, over 2,800 civilians have been arrested, over 500 have been charged, and many are in hiding. Over 600 civilians have been killed on the street and in their homes. Most of them were deliberately shot in the head and back. They were also shot with rocket-propelled grenades. The military and police under their command have committed extrajudicial killings, torture, and looting with total impunity. The fallen ones, including the 7-year-old girl Kim Yo-che, are not just numbers or statistics. They have names and families who dearly love them. Tin Za Hein, a 20-year-old trainee nurse from Mongyua, went to the front line every day to save lives. Angel, a 19-year-old of Chinese descent from Mandalay, wished to donate her body for medical research if she got killed. Somaya or Bamyeche, a 20-year-old Muslim woman from Xinjiang, stood on the front line every day to protect protesters from tear gas and rubber bullets. A placard she carried read, "I will run away if you shoot me, but if I'm not killed today, I will come back tomorrow." Kay Zawin is a 39-year-old poet and a former student union activist from Mongyua. His last poem before he was killed read, "The whole world will be cleansed when the song of young people gets louder. The manifold injustice will cower under the reverberating song of the youth." They are just a few vignettes among the many courageous and selfless heroes who tragically made the ultimate sacrifice for a free and democratic Myanmar. The streets of Yangon and in many parts of the country are now strewn with yellow badao flower, a symbol of New Year for Buddhists, the religious majority. Just as no one can keep the badao from blooming, no one can stop the aspiration of young people who believe freedom and democracy is worth dying for. The people of Myanmar have experienced hope and the relative freedom of the military control transition from 2011 to 2021. They would never give up their rights. Neither the terrorist junta nor any state siding with them have the power to crush the determination of 53 million people. Some have framed the Nui revolution as a violent riot or a part of a Western agenda, which is condescending and an insult to the intelligence and agency of Myanmar people. We will take none of that. The price to fight against the military dictatorship is steep. Recently, the junta conducted indiscriminate airstrikes in Karen State, resulting civilian deaths and the destruction of schoolhouses and other properties. Over 20,000 people have been displaced, and the Thai government prevented them from reaching safety. A similar fate has fallen to the Kachin, Shan, and Daang people. While urban residents now experience the terror of the military, this has been an unending nightmare of many ethnic and religious minorities, a reality for over 70 years. The democratic transition in Myanmar has uneven across time and space. While civic democratic space opened up in urban areas, hundreds of thousands of Kachin, Shan, and Arakan people were displaced. Myanmar electoral democracy was not enough to stop the rivers of blood. Under the watch of the democratically elected NLD government, 1 million Rohingya people were violently driven from their homes to Bangladesh. The slow-burning genocide is still ongoing today. Land belonging to the Rohingya continues to be confiscated. Just a few days ago, there were reports of 300 acres were confiscated in Mongdo Township. The racist and undemocratic 1982 citizenship law must be abolished, and there must be a clear pathway to reinstate and protect citizenship rights of the Rohingya people. Genocide, war crime, and crimes against humanity were perpetrated by the Myanmar military with blanket impunity for many decades. Repeated calls for holding the perpetrators accountable were ignored. The UN Security Council has the mandate and moral obligation to end the ongoing atrocities and the destruction of more innocent lives. Please allow me to repeat the recent courageous call of 488 Myanmar civil society organizations to the UN Security Council to immediately dispatch an enhanced monitoring and intervention mission to Myanmar to stop the violent attacks by the junta on peaceful protesters and vulnerable minority population across the country, prevent further bloodshed and loss of life, release all those arbitrarily detained. Urgently impose a coordinated global arms embargo on Myanmar, and refer Myanmar to the International Criminal Court to hold the military regime to account for the atrocity crimes that it has committed and is continuing to commit. International support is crucial for the pro-democracy movement in Myanmar. I strongly urge governments to refuse to grant the junta the recognition it desperately wants. Any acknowledgement of the junta as a government legitimates their illegal rule and will cause the people of Myanmar more suffering. Regarding the recent siege of the Myanmar embassy in London, I want to express our disappointment that the UK has taken the unnecessary and unfortunate step of referring to the junta as the government of Myanmar, when the junta is clearly not in control of the country and cannot be considered even the de facto authority. On behalf of the Myanmar people, I would like to thank the individuals, organizations, diplomats, and government who show solidarity and support to Myanmar's struggle. I'm thankful to the countries who designated military-controlled businesses for targeted sanctions. I'm grateful to the companies such as EDF, SecTech, DNB, Nordia, who suspended untenable businesses or divested their shares in military-linked companies. I strongly urge Adani Ports, POSCO, Total, and others to follow suit by suspending payments to the junta and cutting ties with military businesses. For democracy to take root in Myanmar, the economic and social reproduction of military dictatorship must be completely stopped. Today, Myanmar people, including all ethnic and religious minorities, stand strongly behind the leadership of the committee representing the people of Myanmar's democratic representative body. I acknowledge that there are ongoing disagreements, discussion, and negotiations, that there is room to improve. Myanmar people overwhelmingly support the abolishment of the undemocratic 2008 constitution, and we commend the CRPH for their courageous decision to annul it. Madam Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as a Shan and Chinese ethnically mixed person, I'm very proud to call myself a Myanmar today. Amidst the painful circumstances, I'm seeing an emerging new Myanmar, which values human rights and human dignity. We are seeing people challenging old norms such as patriarchy, extreme religious nationalism, racism, and discrimination. The courageous leadership of women like Ethan Zamau is being praised. Many people offer sincere public apologies to the ethnic minority for being ignorant about their decade-long sufferings and for not speaking up for them. I saw people genuinely apologize to Rohingya, Muslims, and other religious minority for previous discriminatory words or action, or for their silence when genocide and religious violence was being committed. I saw disabled people and LGBTQ+ people being praised for their courage. Myanmar has shown that it has the courage and ability to acknowledge, learn from the past mistakes, apologize, heal the wounds, and move forwards. I commend the courage of the government staff, including police and military personnel, who joined the Civil Disobedience Movement, or CDM. Despite the brutal crackdown, they courageously persisted. The doctors and medical staff initiating the CDM and risking their own life to save many at the front line will be forever remembered. In the early days of the protests, Myanmar people hoped the UN or international community will intervene decisively. Although some expectations are unrealistic, we also observe that some international actors are not fulfilling their moral duty and mandate under international law. Myanmar people are disappointed and offended by the actions of some states that persistently block their calls for a decisive international intervention. Such interference damages relations in a way that could be irreversible. Myanmar people feel that they are left alone to face the brutal regime, armed to its teeth, stocked from arms sold by the same international actors who preventing action. The realization that they are on their own makes Myanmar people more determined about what future they want and how they must fight for it. Myanmar people are determined that they will not tolerate any form of dictatorship nor mockery of a democracy. They are defiant and courageously defending their rights. To achieve democracy and freedom, they will continue fighting through any means available for them. Myanmar has a long history of non-violent movement, as well as a 70-year-long and ongoing armed revolution. Thousands of young people are now leaving the cities to join armed movements. None of us who fail to take decisive action and let the terrorist junta enjoy blanket impunity for their atrocity crimes has a right to tell young people that they are wrong to take up arms. Do they have any choice to choose between peaceful democratic transition and an armed civil war? Does the Security Council and its member states have the conscience and the right to say so? With or without the support of the UN Security Council, Myanmar people are determined to create their own democratic future. The Security Council and the member state can decide which side of the history they are going to stand, with the people of the Myanmar or with the war criminals who orchestrated the coup. I pray wisdom and compassion prevail and that the Nui revolution will bring a new federal democratic Myanmar very soon. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Sai Sam, for your briefing. I'm going to pass the floor now to Richard Halsey, a senior advisor working on Myanmar for International Crisis Group, who will brief on the humanitarian, economic and security risks the military coup presents for regional stability. Richard, over to you.
Madam Chair, members of the Council, distinguished speakers, thank you for this opportunity to speak today. You've heard a powerful presentation from a civil society leader, and you'll hear shortly from a senior representative of the CRPH. As an independent observer, I can perhaps best contribute to this discussion by situating the current crisis in the country's broader context. To put it simply, Myanmar stands at the brink of state failure, of state collapse. This is not hyperbole or rhetoric. It is my sober assessment of a likely path forward. Since launching its coup on the 1st of February, the Myanmar military should have learned what voters also conveyed clearly at the ballot box in November, that the vast majority of the population does not want military rule and will do whatever it takes to prevent that outcome. Yet the military seems determined to impose its will, as shown by its use to prevent that outcome. Yet the military seems determined to impose its will, as shown by its use of violence against civilian protesters, medical first responders, the general urban population. The problem for the regime is that unlike in 1988, or the 1990s, or the 2007 suppression of the Saffron Revolution, the violence is not producing its desired results. Despite the bloodshed, people continue to demonstrate in the streets. A large proportion of public sector employees refuse to work for the regime. A general strike of key private sector staff continues. army violence isn't effective at convincing scared bank staff or truck drivers to return to work. Violence cannot restore business confidence. A military rampage on the streets and in the homes of Yangon and Mandalay and other cities and towns appears a desperate attempt to terrorize the population into submission. Instead, it's created chaos. Various forms of violent urban resistance to the regime are also emerging. The upshot is that the coup has not yet succeeded, and the regime has not been able to gain effective control of the government bureaucracy or of local administration in the country. It is able to deploy violence, but not provide any semblance of law and order. This has important policy implications. Close engagement with the CRPH, with those who are protesting in the streets, and with other legitimate representatives of the people is vital. The military regime is not constitutional or otherwise legal, and countries and organizations should not preempt the situation by recognizing its de facto authority when the coup is not a fait accompli. But in the midst of all this horror, the transformative nature of the resistance against the military has to be acknowledged and applauded. A new generation of political action has emerged that's transcended old divisions and old prejudices, and gives great hope for a future Myanmar that embraces and is at peace with its diversity. The actions of the regime aren't just morally reprehensible, they're also extremely dangerous. Not only has the military been unable to consolidate its attempted coup and effectively govern the country, but also its actions may be creating a situation where the country becomes ungovernable. That should be of grave concern to the region and to the broader international community. The precise contours of state failure are hard to predict, depending not only on what goes wrong, but also in what order. But the trajectory is alarming. First, the banking system is at a virtual standstill and has been for 2 months now. That means businesses can't make and receive payments, individuals can't access their cash, and payrolls aren't being processed. The regime has been threatening private banks to get them to reopen branches, but many staff are unwilling to go to work. And with the military perpetrating random violence on the street, others are afraid to do so. Just last week, a local employee of a Korean bank in Yangon was fatally shot in the head by soldiers while she was traveling home in a company vehicle. The attempted coup has resulted in a hard stop in economic activity, precipitating an economic crisis that will push millions into poverty. Second, supply chains are breaking down. Most imports and exports have come to a halt as customs staff and port workers